Hello and welcome to the Built to Serve podcast. I'm your host, Mike Favre. I'm here with U.S. Navy veteran Captain Steve Shepard and also the founder of Carrier Sailor. How are you doing, sir? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's good to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me down here. Well, I started Carrier Sailor after I retired because I love military history and I love military leadership, and I think you can really help organizations and help people grow through using those experiences from military history and through military experiences to find areas in an organization where they can be better. Like your motto here, we build better. You know, any organization that's going to succeed has to be one of continuous improvement. So that's what Carrier Sailor does. It's trying to help that organization be an organization of continuous improvement.
Absolutely. You know, we've actually got a relationship, Carrier Sailor and performance. You know, we definitely use your expertise and leadership as a captain on an aircraft carrier, right? We definitely know that there's a lot of leadership involved in that. We take your expertise and we actually utilize it for some of our leadership. So we definitely want to thank you for coming. And taking part in our Built to Serve podcast. So let's get started. I'll go ahead and ask you, so where are you from? Talk to me about where you were born. Take me through high school.
Okay, so I was born and raised in Norfolk, Virginia. You know, my grandfather had went up there in World War I and stayed. And my father came there after World War II and stayed. So I'm the product of two world wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but so born and raised there. My father was in World War II. Okay, so he was age 60 when he had me. Okay, that's Army strong.
Yeah.
He was a soldier.
I like that.
Yeah, and but he died when I was very young.
Okay.
Okay, so I grew up without my dad. He died when I was about 5 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was raised by a single mom who worked very hard.
Sure.
But I think part of that experience, knowing my dad had been a soldier in World War II, I'd always kind of been interested in the military. Now, my dad had not talked a lot about his service. But what he used to do is take us to museums. He used to take us to military events. And so he spoke volumes without saying a lot by what he did. Okay?
Understood.
So I think I kind of had an interest in the military. So throughout that time, as I was growing up in Norfolk, I eventually got involved with the Navy Junior ROTC.
Okay.
Did that in high school. And then as we started to get towards college, I had been, what shall we say, I was not a very studious person.
Oh.
Okay. Right. I had been more interested in extracurricular activities and so forth, but I always knew I wanted to join the military.
Okay. So you knew on at an early age that you wanted to join the military. Okay.
So I was about 6 years old when a family vacation to Hawaii, but the year after my dad died. And we did a tour of Pearl Harbor. And as we were doing this tour, you got on a boat, and this was pre-9/11, you could sail around the Fort Island in Pearl Harbor. We stopped at the USS Arizona, which was the battleship that was sunk there, over 1,100 casualties.
Right.
And as we pulled alongside on this boat, all these older people were crying. And I asked my mom, I said, well, what happened here? Because, well, they had friends who died on that ship, and they're remembering them. And so this lady came out and had this little booklet about Pearl Harbor, which my mom bought for me. And I think that was really the beginning of my journey. I said, well, there's something here. Something that spoke to me I wanted to learn more about. It created a passion and desire, which, led to a 31-year career.
Sure. Wow, that's incredible. So how old were you, did you say, when you were in Pearl Harbor?
6.5.
So you were at 6.5 years old, and you still have that in your memory bank, right? You still remember that. So at that point, did you understand much about the military?
I don't know if I understood enough about it. I understood that, it's something I wanted to do, and I think it's important to know at that time. This is, I'll give my age away. This is 1974.
Oh, wow, okay.
So in my neighborhood, we had plenty of World War II veterans. Okay, in my church, we had plenty of World War II veterans. So they were all around us. And so for me, it was just, I could talk to these people, I could learn, and it made me think, that's something I want to do. Now, at that young age, you're thinking about, hey, this is cool stuff, gung-ho. You're thinking about going to war.
Sure.
What you see and perceive is this kind of romantic thing of going out and being in uniform. But once you get into the military, and unfortunately, as you start to deal with some of these hostilities, things aren't as romantic, but it's an important mission that needs to be done.
Absolutely. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, Norfolk, Virginia is... There's a huge Navy presence there, correct?
It's like the world's largest, free world's largest naval base. Yeah.
So you grew up, up till the age of 5 with an Army soldier as a
That's correct.
as
Yeah.
a father, right?
Right.
And do you think being raised in Norfolk is what led you to the Navy?
I do. Now, as a kid, we lived by the water, we lived
Right.
by the Elizabeth River, and we were always building rafts. You know, we were taking models and sailing them out there. So we were always around in and around the water.
Sure. Okay.
You know, and I got to appreciate the weather. You know, lived through a couple of hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just something that, you know, I think really appealed to me. Now, I eventually worked as a deckhand on a cruise ship. Well, it was a dinner cruise ship, the New Spirit of Norfolk. So,
Okay.
so I was out there in the water, and I said, you know, I don't mind getting paid for this. This seems kind of fun. You know, so I was outdoors. You know, I was doing things. You know, and you know, it was some early leadership responsibilities.
Gotcha.
You know, as the first mate, so working with the deckhands and so forth. And that was interesting because some of the deckhands were quite older than me.
Okay.
You know, and so it was a good experience. It really taught me how to learn to work with people, respect people, and value them, and make them part of a team.
Wow, that's outstanding. I'm sitting here thinking, and I want to. So, in our company right now, we have 477 veterans within our company.
That's great.
Now, I'm proud to say that there's a larger percentage than anything else. We have Army veterans.
Okay.
And I'm Army, so hua. So,
I can do it.
with that being said, you know, we don't take very well to water. You know, we stay kind of away from that. We don't really know much about the Navy and their rank structure. I didn't up until actually when I met you. So when I introduce you and I say, you know, Captain Steve Shepard, us Army guys, we're thinking, okay, well, he's an 03. That is completely incorrect, right? So go ahead and square me away real quick, and those who are watching and listening.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Okay, so as a captain, I'm equivalent to a full colonel in the Army or the Air Force.
Okay.
Okay, but the Navy has to make it difficult. So let's say that you're in command of a ship,
Yes, sir.
and it's a small ship. You can still be called the captain if you're a lieutenant commander or major.
Okay.
You know, and we've had chiefs, which are like, you know, sergeant first class, you know,
Right.
E7s, be in charge of tugboats. You could technically call them captain.
Ah.
Okay, so yeah, so sometimes you hear the word captain. That's referring to the position on the ship. You may or may not be the rank of captain.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that squared me away, and I hope it squared you away too if you didn't know. But
And Mike, if I could tell one story about my favorite.
Sure,
uncle,
absolutely. Go ahead.
My uncle served with Patton.
okay.
Okay, he's from North Carolina. And so when he showed up for induction in 1942, they got him into a field and they said, everyone who has a driver's license, stand on the right.
Okay.
Everyone who doesn't have a driver's license, stand on the left. Okay, the guys on the right went into tanks. They had a driver's license. The guys on the left who didn't have a driver's license went into infantry. And so my thought was, I pictured that there's a sergeant working with a young lieutenant. The lieutenant's like, how are we supposed to break these guys up to figure out who goes into tanks and who goes into infantry? And I can just picture him, sure, this is pretty easy. One guy goes to the right if you have a driver's license, one guy goes to the left. So I think the Army has some very good common sense sometimes in dealing with those kind of issues. And that's why
right.
we want you on land, okay?
Yeah.
We'll take care of the water, you take care of the land.
That's it. That's exactly right. We have the utmost faith in our Navy to take care of the water, you know, our Air Force and portions of our Marine Corps to take care of the air and the Navy as well. You know, I mean, it's the Coast Guard, they do their job protecting our coastlines, and our Army, we're the force that comes in, settles on land, and you know, we maintain ground force and we make pushes with the Marines. We work with the Navy. I mean, our military works really, really well together. I can say that. So I have the utmost respect for every branch. Well, so going back into into high school,
Right.
did you play any sports?
Yeah, I did track and cross country.
Okay.
You know, I ran those. I hadn't really had done a lot of sports prior to that. You know, I did some biking on the paper. I had a long paper route, so I was always on my bike every morning for a good couple hours. But then I did track and cross country. Well, if I want to join the military, I'm going to need to know how to run.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
and so a lot of times it's just to give me some skills at running and to just be healthy.
Okay. Yeah. So you're in high school or college when you decide you're going to join the Navy?
So, you opened the door to a story there. So when I was graduating high school, I got this letter in the mail from New Mexico Military Institute.
Okay.
He said, if you join New Mexico Military Institute, you can join the Army Early Commissioning Program and get a commission 2 years into the Reserve or National Guard. Okay.
Okay.
So I said, well, that seems like a pretty good deal, you know. So I went out there with the anticipation of going into the Army.
Oh,
okay. Because I'd been interested in the Army and Navy, and the Army seemed to be the one that was the most open door at this point.
Sure.
And what ended up happening out there was a great school. Most of my instructors were all Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so, and I think what I want to pause there is that when I went to that school with the Army, it was really about the profession of arms. I think for those who join the military, it's not about a job. It's about the profession of arms. You are there to be a warrior. You're there to be a soldier, sailor. And that's where I first really got exposed to a sitting down, talking tactics, strategy, leadership experiences, and how do we better ourselves to, bring out the best in others and bring out the best of yourself at the same time. So I think that's what I was really leaning towards. So throughout that process, I wanted to do that. Well, this was right after the Cold War was starting to wind down in the 80s. I mean, the Cold War didn't end quite yet, but the Army said in about 1987, we're going to downsize.
Yep.
And so they started telling us, there were about 96 of us in the commissioning program, you may or may not eventually go on active duty. The goal was to go into the reserve, and then 2 to 3 years later, go on active duty. Okay. That was always the end goal. So as I was talking, they're like, well, you've got to affiliate with certain units, depending on what state you're in. The goalpost kept moving. And so one day, I called the Navy, and I'm like, so how does it work if I go Naval ROTC? We'll commission you the day after college graduation. So at that point, I made the decision that I was going to pursue the Navy.
Okay. So it had nothing to do with the fact that you lived in Norfolk?
I think that was, as it got down towards the decision, I started thinking how much I missed the water.
Ah, gotcha.
I like being in New Mexico. I enjoy that environment, but I got to a point where I do miss the water. I miss being on ships. But I think part of it was when you're that age, when you're 18, 19, 20, you're still, where am I going to go? Where am I going to have my passion? And there's so many opportunities out there, and I wrestled with that decision,
Oh, sure.
For a week. I spoke to all my instructors, and they were all very, very supportive, but they said, you got to do what's best for you. Right. And whether you serve in the Army or the Navy, you're still serving. And that was the thing that kind of struck with me. So I said, okay. So at that point, it seemed to make the most sense to join the Navy. Okay.
Well, it's to me, and I'm a man of faith. It's amazing to me how things just work out. It's like it almost happens for a reason, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Lord works mysterious ways.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about your introduction into the Navy. So as a commissioned guy, and after you graduate, you actually join the Navy, correct? After your
I did the ROTC in college. Okay. You did a midshipman cruise where you go out and on a ship. Okay. And then you graduate, and then you go right into your basic, your officer basic training.
Okay, so explain that to me. Now, I've never known anybody to go to officer basic training. What is that like?
Well, because I did the 4 years of ROTC, I did not have to go to a boot camp or an officer candidate school. I got commissioned, but I went to my basic, what do you call it, an MOS school?
Yeah, AIT.
So that's what I did. So you complete intelligence school. So I was commissioned at college, so I had everything to be an officer. I get my warfare special training at intelligence school, and then I joined the fleet. Okay. And then so I went to an intelligence position, a tactical intelligence officer for an A6 intruder squadron. Okay. So an A6 is a two-seat aircraft, jet aircraft, subsonic. You have a pilot, a bombardier, sit next to each other. They carry 18,000 pounds of ordnance. It's all about putting bombs on target or bombs on foreheads. You may have heard that one before. Yep. So that's what that's do. So I was one of two intel officers in the squadron. And so when I joined the squadron, Desert Storm had kicked off.
Okay.
So we were in train to go over to be a part of Desert Storm.
Oh, wow.
Now, my carrier had been the first carrier in the Red Sea after the invasion of Kuwait, but they came back in August. The invasion happened. They were on scene. And then back in January is when the war kicked off.
Right.
And we were back in the States, and we were getting the carrier ready to go back over. We were actually heading out to Fallon, Nevada, where we were doing training out there.
Okay.
So that was kind of the next big thing, and getting ready to go to war.
So what's your mentality like? I mean, you're about to go to war, right? And was there someone there on the ship with you or in the pilot seat that you looked up to that helped you keep your bearings?
So, the intelligence, there's an intelligence officer for the air wing, and he was pretty good. He kind of helped, ride herd over us. But I really look back to the squadron, and to the people in the squadron, to the people I was having those interactions with,
Right.
who were really kind of helping me understand what it was to be an intelligence officer in an attack squadron.
Okay.
There were several different people who were kind of help me along, and then they'd be the first one to kind of say, hey, you're really off on this. You need to fix what you're doing. That you need to help us understand the threat better.
Right.
Because sometimes I was an instant. I didn't know. I was trying to do what I thought was right, but then they'd be like, well, we're flying the mission. This is what we need to know.
Right.
So it was a gradual learning process for some of that.
Oh, wow.
We did have a senior intelligence officer for the entire carrier strike group, a guy by the name of Joe Stewart, and he was an amazing officer. In fact, I wanted to be like him. I was that's the kind of officer I want to be.
Wow.
Now he didn't mentor me, okay, but he kind of mentored me by me just observing him, how he did business, the way that he talked to people, the way that he asked questions, the way that he handled himself professionally. So that kind of showed me an example of what an intelligence officer can do in a carrier strike group. So I kind of said, I want that job. I think I can do that. That's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of role I want to have.
Okay, so that kind of motivated you into being what you wound up being. Ultimately a captain of an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
That's one of the, I guess, your leading stepping stones.
Right. So I was the information warfare commander on aircraft carrier. I wasn't the actual CO of the ship.
Right.
But I can talk more about that. But there was a skipper within that squadron, a guy named Bud Jewett, became a 2-star admiral.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him as kind of a leadership example, and I felt like if I let him down, I was letting my dad down.
Oh, wow.
You didn't want to let him down. And
So he was the old man.
The way he handled himself, that if you made a mistake, you felt like you'd let the team down.
Wow.
And so every time you went in to do something for him, you gave your best shot. And I think that kind of showed me a model of how to inspire people, how to lead people. And I think, someone once told me years later, when I let you down, sir, I feel like I'm letting my dad down.
Oh, man.
I said, okay. I learned. Now, as I got older, someone said, sir, I feel like I'm letting my grandfather down. When I let you down, I knew it was time to retire because
Right.
I was getting old.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And so we actually, off in the weeds again, so we actually have a gentleman that works within performance, and he's a veteran himself, which is, it's kind of ironic that all this kind of goes into what you're saying. He's well known, especially in our Mobile division and our corporate division. So he's a senior construction manager. I'm not going to mention any names, but if any of our Mobile region are watching or listening, you're definitely going to know who I'm talking about. So great man, great leader. He's the kind of guy that when he talks, it carries a lot of weight.
Right.
A lot of weight. And especially when he's talking to you individually, he doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to insult you, but you've let him down.
Right.
Right? And I mean, I've had that talk. Being young and trying to advance at a high rate, you're going to screw up.
Yeah.
You're going to make mistakes. Being a leader like him and being able to carry that much power just in a conversation to make you want to do better without having to holler at you, without having to scream, like a drill sergeant or drill instructor or whatever the case may be, it does something to you.
Right.
And it allows me to maintain a even higher level of respect for you as a leader. So
Absolutely.
I completely understand what you're talking about. If David's listening, I've got the most amount of respect for this man than just about anybody else. So I definitely understand. So back into what we were talking about. If you were coming back, or when you were coming back, did you have a family? I mean, were you in the midst of starting a family?
I was
what going
single.
on? Okay.
Not that I wanted to get married.
Right.
None of the relationships ever led to that.
Right.
But I think it's also harder when you're in the Navy and you're gone a lot.
Right.
I've gone out with some girls who, I think the military was not something they wanted to be a
Sure.
part of. So I think and part of it is as a young sailor, I had some growing up to do.
Yeah.
I was volunteering to do things. We talked, during the break, they said, hey, we need to go to Somalia. I went, hey, Somalia, never been there. Let's try that out.
Right. Right.
So, and while, the orders got changed, I was, if opportunities came up, I wanted to be operational. I wanted to get as much as I could out of the Navy.
Roger that.
Take every opportunity. And it was probably at that time I may have been more interested in my career than a family.
Yeah.
And,
I got you.
Yeah.
So you were still in the Navy when you started a family, though, right? I mean,
Right, about 12 years in.
Okay.
And it was funny because by that point I'd done some sea tours, done multiple deployments. So by the time I did start a family, I was ready to do that. I think I had the right, maturity and ready to move forward and start a family.
So how many years were you in all total?
31.
31 years. Wow. That's a long time. I mean, you can retire after 20, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So what made you want to stay in?
Well, it was interesting. I talked to you earlier about when I wanted to be the intelligence officer for a carrier strike group. So
Sure.
when that happened, I remember thinking to myself, well, this has kind of been that goal. I'm right at roughly 20 years when I was in that position. And during that period of time, I got picked up for command.
Okay.
And I was surprised to pick up command because prior to that, they weren't doing command screening boards. It was just kind of, there were only a couple of slots open. Well, then the year I got picked up, they had multiple command slots open. I ended up getting one. And I said, well, I think I can make a difference. I think I can continue to impact the Navy, and I still had gas in the tank, as I like to say.
Right, yeah.
And so I kept staying. And I think when, as you get senior, you start to make decisions, what's important to me. I knew I loved the Navy. I knew I wanted to continue to contribute to the Navy. I knew I loved sailors. I wanted to be at sea.
Right.
And so that's what kept me going.
Okay. So while you were in the military in your 31 years, what would you say was probably your biggest struggle personally?
Biggest struggle. I think I moved every assignment. So I think, my sense of community is always the military.
Right.
That's a good question. I think for me, we were moving around so much. I was always, it seemed like more at the end, the biggest challenge is when we finally stopped.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, what am I going to transition?
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest struggle. I felt everything within the military kind of made sense. I knew I had certain jobs, responsibilities. As you get senior, it does become a little bit harder. You're not able to do some things you want to do. There's a lot of different factors coming in.
Sure.
There politics, as with any organization.
Sure.
And you're not always able to do things you want to do. But, I still felt I could contribute. So I kept sailing.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and talk about what you brought, and then we're going to talk about, your end time of service going into the transition. So tell me about what you brought.
Okay, so what I have here is a brick from the Hanoi Hilton. So the Hanoi Hilton is where, during the Vietnam War, when American pilots were shot down, this was the primary prison facility in Hanoi, North Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
So after I did my first assignment, I went to the Defense POWMI office where I worked Vietnam Missing in Action for 3 years. I traveled to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, trying to account for those missing from the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this would be crash site investigations. This would be soldiers who disappeared on patrol. It could be, Air Force who disappear on missions, et cetera. And we would go and try to find out what happened. And it was almost like being a cold case detective.
Yeah, I was thinking that as you were saying that.
So
That's
you would
exactly what I
go
was thinking
through,
of.
what happened. we were able to go into Vietnam and go to these villages, go to these sites, and interview witnesses at the time to try to find out what happened to them. But this brick from the Hanoi Hilton was a special meaning to me. So Hanoi Hilton is where our prisoners were held, and they were treated terribly. They were tortured. So
Our soldiers and our Marines.
right. And so John McCain, Senator McCain, when he was shot
Senator,
down,
right, yeah.
he was held at the Hanoi Hilton.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and so I had the opportunity over the years to work with several former POWs in different capacities. When I was working with General Chuck Boyd, he's retired, and we were traveling in Europe with him on a project. I was talking to him about his time in Vietnam. He was shot down in 1965 and held till 1973.
Oh, my.
So he shot down as a captain, as an 03, and spends about 8 years, 7, 8 years in captivity. I asked him, so how did you feel about being shot down? He goes, well, he didn't really think about it. He didn't really, rethink the decisions, the tactical decisions he made. He goes,
Sure.
I played the card I'd been dealt.
Wow.
And so I think about, when I see this brick, I think a couple things. One, play the card you've been dealt as a
Sure.
leader. Okay. The second thing is you got to be a team, part of a team. And for those in the prison, the North Vietnamese were doing everything they could to break the POWs. They wanted them to think people in America forgot about you. They don't care about you. You guys are war criminals. You're never going home. They're trying to break them. But as they bonded together, they're able to fight the mental war against the Vietnamese. And I think it also shows that the sacrifices that our people go through for our freedom.
Sure.
But probably on a personal note, because I got this brick when they started tearing down the Hanoi Hilton. It's now a museum. There's portions
wow,
still
okay.
standing. Yeah.
In Vietnam?
In Vietnam, yeah. And they called the Hanoi Hilton sarcastically, oh, welcome to Hanoi Hilton. But the thing that got him through that time in captivity was prayer
Oh, wow.
and the man of faith. And when I look at this brick, I wonder what kind of prayers this brick may have heard.
Wow.
And it reminds me to pray. It reminds me of what we have to go through, the sacrifice, the ordeal, and it inspires me when I think about that. And that assignment was one of the most meaningful assignments I ever had.
Oh, I'm sure.
We were able to help. It took several year process to account for some missing Americans and bring their remains home.
So y'all were able to find
we
some.
were able to bring some home.
My goodness.
And there's also some amazing stories of prayer and faith, how it all came out, and to
Sure.
bringing these guys home and bringing closure to their families. But when in that assignment, you talked about mentors. There was a guy by the name of Gary Seadow. He was a civilian. He'd been enlisted in the Army in Vietnam. He really taught me the art of intelligence. I mean, I learned it from a military perspective, but Gary was a good mentor to me. He challenged me. We'd have a lot of discussions, and we would go back and forth on analytical issues. I learned a lot from him. I really think I became an intel officer under him. And so forth. And he prepared me for the next assignment when I went to an aircraft carrier in Japan, where I think I met probably the one mentor in my career who stuck with me, the guy named Rear Admiral Hound Dog McLean.
Okay. Hound Dog.
Hound Dog McLean. He's a Blue Angel, ended up retiring the 2-star. The thing about the mentor-mentee relationship is that there has to be some sort of connection there.
Right.
I have bosses who would provide leadership and guidance, but they weren't necessarily mentors. Hound Dog was a mentor, and he was a guy who would challenge me, and he'd ask me, what are you doing here? It wasn't, all pot. He would, if he felt I was getting out of line, say, hey, you need to focus here.
Wow.
But he brought out the best in me, right?
Sure.
And he really taught me a lot. And when I thought about leadership issues I would face in the future, he would be one of the models I would always kind of reflect on.
Okay. So going into the next question, tell me what it's like being in command.
When I first got selected for command, it was an awesome feeling that you finally get a chance to lead, that the Navy has faith and trust in you, but it's also a responsibility because I was going to have to be responsible for people, and I need to give it my best. So I started thinking back of all the leaders I'd served with. I told you about some of them earlier. And then I'm also a passionate about military history. I started thinking about past military commanders, the way that they did things. How do I communicate? I've been fortunate to be a speechwriter for an Army general back at U.S. European Command. So a four-star general by the name of General William E. Ward. And in my interview with him, he sat down and said, I want you to know I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm not going to demean you, that when you work for me, we work as a team. I'll correct you if I'm wrong. But sometimes people misinterpret my nature as weakness, and then I have to correct them, and
Sure.
they pay the price. And when I thought about that, because I realized that I'm not a screamer, I'm not a yeller, right? And I've had some people who I've worked with tell me, you got to be a screamer, you got to be a yeller, and I said, that's not me.
Yeah.
So General Ward told me, be who you are.
Sure.
And his relief was a fighter pilot by the name of Dick Gallagher, an F-14 guy, and he was the same way. He brought the best out of you, but he wanted to scream you out. He held you accountable. They were great leaders. So I realized in command, I need to be myself.
Right.
There's some people who go to command, they have a command theater. They're saying and doing things in order to create an effect among the personnel. And whether it's scaring or whatever, they're trying to do something to be dramatic, to make a point or influence it. And I always felt that that's just not me.
Right.
Now it depends on the type of unit you're leading. Leading a unit in the combat may need more stern type efforts as opposed to, leading intelligence center like
Sure.
I was. But I realized quickly that when I got in there that I was being watched. And I thought about the fact that when I sat down to talk to my senior leaders in the morning, I had a morning meeting with my senior, my master chief as an E9.
Yep.
Talked to my XO. I realized I need to be very careful what I said about some of the sailors. Not that there's a circle of trust there, but let's say I said something like, yeah, I think that sailor's a dirtbag. I could see that the master chief would say, yeah, the skipper thinks that sailor's a dirtbag. And I never want anything I said to be misinterpreted.
Understood.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I ultimately had the responsibility. I remember one time we were sitting around the table. I had all the senior leaders, CMC, XO, myself, the triad. I had a lawyer there. We had some other people there. We were dealing with a legal issue. And I asked them, I said, well, I think this is what we ought to do. What do you all think? So we went around the room. Yes, sir. That sounds great. Sounds great. So we put forth this policy, and it didn't work. And we sat back down after we got back from the legal meeting, and they said we were looking to do some administrative punishment. And the lawyer goes, yeah, I didn't think that would work. And I'm like, I thought you said this would work. And then they said, well, sir, you seem you really wanted to do it. I said, okay, stop. I asked for your opinion. I need you to be the stop, check balances if there's something going on. And so, just, if you feel it can work, you need to say so. If I'm pushing forward something and then I ask your opinion, I'm asking your opinion.
Right.
I'm not asking you to rubber stamp something. I want you to go, hey, I think you might want to consider this, or sir, this may not work. But I realize the words matter.
Absolutely.
And what you do, and you have to make sure you're creating the tone as a leader where people can give and take feedback. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was an important lesson for me. I think another thing I realized is that my kids were small. Okay, I just come off a deployment on the Enterprise. Been
Okay.
gone. I missed a lot of time with my kids, and they were, they were around, I would say 4 and 6 at the time.
Okay.
So I was taking time out during the day to go to their kindergarten lunches, picnics, and all the things that were all being
Sure.
held on base
Right.
where my command was. And I put it on my calendar, child center or, kindergarten lunch or whatever.
Right.
I didn't think I just wanted people to know where I was.
Okay.
Well, I started having people come up to me going, sir, we appreciate you doing that, because we realized that it was okay for us to ask if we could do things with our kids. So the leader set the tone.
Right.
And your calendar is going to reflect where your priorities are. If people are looking at your calendar, they can kind of see, well, where's he doing? What's his time? And investing in people.
Right.
And I think that was the thing. We had civilian contractors working for us. So I had in the Joint Military Intelligence Training Center, I had active duty military, had Department of Defense civilians, and we had some civilian contractors who were supporting the training efforts.
Okay.
And you have to build a team, right?
Sure.
But everyone is on the team. You know, so when we came up for Civilian of the Year, we had a contractor receive that award, a civilian
Oh, wow.
contractor. And it was unbelievable the impact that had on the workforce.
Wow.
Everyone felt a part of the team. They felt equal. And those people who are recognized, you couldn't turn them off. Their productivity was just unbelievable.
Wow.
And some of them later came into the workforce, federal workforce, said, I think I like this. I like what I'm seeing.
Okay.
So you got to set that tone early for leaders, from people to see it.
Absolutely. And we can all take take some advice from that. That's great. That's great. So being in command and being a leader, what do you think are some key elements that really stand out and define a good leader?
Well, I think a good leader needs to be honest and transparent. First of all, you got to have trust.
Okay.
You know, I think one of the most important things that I learned about leadership was from an Army private.
Oh, wow.
So back in
Hey, we teach everybody.
you
That's
teach
what we
everybody,
do.
right? So the thing I think about is I went to Europe with some of the Band of Brothers when I was stationed over there on a tour where Babe Heffron, who was in the Band of Brothers in the book, and you'll see him in the miniseries, came over to Europe, and we did a battlefield tour with him.
The actual
Babe Heffron.
soldiers.
Right. Yep. And we had a couple other guys from the 101st. And so we went from battlefield to battlefield to battlefield, and I got to know Babe. Now, Babe, he's from South Philly, right?
Okay.
He's a tough guy. They're not they're not huggers. Okay.
Right.
They're very stern and got to know him. And I think he was kind of looking at me kind of funny at first as Navy commander, but got to know him. But during this 10-day tour, got to talk to each other. The last night, he said, "Commander, I want you to come over here." So,
Okay.
And I said, "Yes, sir."
Yes, sir. Right. Roger that.
He said, he grabbed my hand. Again, these guys aren't prone to affection. "I want you to promise me something." He said, "What's that?" "I want you to promise me." "I will promise you, Babe. What is it?" "Promise me you'll take care of your troops, and they'll take care of you." And I said, "I will. And I will. Promise me. I promise you." And I thought about that, and that became my command philosophy when I was in command.
No
Take care of your
kidding.
troops, and they'll take care of you. Because everything comes back to the mission.
Wow.
So if I take care of the troops, they'll take care of the mission.
Absolutely.
It's all a big circle. And when I left command, that's what they gave me. They gave me a framed picture. Take care of your troops, they'll take care of you.
Yeah, and your troops gave that to you.
Yeah. So I think, that's the thing that you learn is you're there in a position of responsibility. It's not to get me promoted, although that happens. It's not about making me great. It's about serving others, servant
Wow.
leadership, and helping people reach their full potential, recognizing them, helping them to take care of themselves and their families, and to set an example for them to grow and mature and be leaders.
Wow. Those are great points. Great key elements. And I going into a little bit about performance, I tell a lot of people this, our structure is a lot similar to the military's. I mean, all the way down from our fire watches, our flaggers and spotters, to helper, to journeyman, to foreman, general foreman, superintendent, all the way up to our vice president, and our president. We work a lot of the, similar ways as the military as well. So just let's say, and I can refer to the Army as a squad leader, normally that's your E5. In the construction world, we would consider him a foreman, right?
Okay.
And he has a squad under him, his crew or her crew, whichever. That is the first level of leadership, right?
Right.
So some of those key elements that you mentioned, especially, taking care of your troops or taking care of your people, and they'll take care of you, that applies to our industry, our way of doing things. If you're over a pipe crew, iron crew, whatever,
Right.
welding, whatever the case may be, you take care of your people and they'll take care of you. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's great philosophy. Great philosophy. So, all right, back into it. Now, you're just say 30 years into your hiatus, I guess, throughout the Navy. And you've been told that you're going to retire, or your time's up? What's going on at this point?
So I was screened. We had a screening board, major command screening board. That's like being in command of a carrier or a carrier air wing or a destroyer squadron. From an intelligence perspective, I was screened to be an information warfare commander.
Okay.
So I oversaw all the intelligence, cryptology, meteorological, all those people within a carrier strike group.
Sure.
And I was going to be the warfare commander as a new role for a carrier strike group. There are only a few of them. And so as my time came up, they said, hey, this is an important job. And this is, we think you would be good at it. To me, it was going back to sea. Mm-hmm. I'd done 5 carriers before that, and I was ready to go back to sea. And I said, wow, let's make Abraham Lincoln number 6. It turned out I was going to hit 2 more carriers. The Ford was the last carrier I served with. But I love being at sea. I love being at sailors. That's where you're operational. That's where I felt I was the best leader. I felt I was more effective at sea.
Okay.
I did staff work. I was the chief of staff when I got picked up for this role in the Pentagon. So Pentagon duty is interesting. I think you go to Pentagon in order to go back to sea. You're ready to go back to sea once you've done the Pentagon tour.
Right.
So at that point, I was doing that, and there was potential that promotion could come out of it.
To admiral.
So there was discussion that this role, is never guaranteed, but only 1% of the officer corps makes it to admiral.
Oh, wow.
So to me, that would have been nice, but I wanted to start my career at sea and end my career at sea if that's where I was going to go.
Okay.
And I felt like at that point I was reaching the end of what I could provide the Navy. Mm-hmm. I still had some gas in my tank, but I felt like, if I had picked up flag, let's just say that for some reason the Lord wanted me to be to, I was probably going to do 1 or 2 assignments and retire. I felt like I was at the end, and I wanted to focus on my family and kids in high school. So I was getting ready for that transition.
So, again, throughout your 30 years or 31 years of service, and this might get a little personal,
Sure.
and if it is, definitely let me know. What's one thing throughout your service that you regret? That's kind of I just threw it at you, I know, but I'm really curious because it seems like you had like a flawless career. I mean, if you could take one thing back and redo it, what would it be? My first squadron assignment, I had a couple of junior sailors who were working with me, and I think I probably couldn't have been a better steward of them. I think I was probably working harder to be their friend than their leader. Mm. I'm not like talking about going out in town and everything, but I was treating them as professionals. And there was just some time there where I think I need to be more stern with them. Really?
In the beginning of my career, I realized that I needed to be more hold the sailors accountable.
Right.
And I think it's. You look around, and discipline's important. Accountability is important.
Yep.
Whenever I did military justice, when we had to do, take people to captain's mast, mm-hmm. I had to remind myself I didn't put them in that situation. They put themselves in that situation. I'm the one who has to sort it out.
Wow.
So I could probably be too. In the beginning, I may have been a little too caring and too understanding.
Sure.
I may have let some situations slide where I probably could have been a little more firmer.
Understood.
But this is all an evolution. I think as you gain experience, you start to go, I need to be more, more effective.
So you learned that later in your career.
As I moved
at
on,
some point, right?
And there was a point in my career I was working with some challenging personalities.
Sure.
I tell you what, the job got done. Did the people like me? No, but that's okay. The mission got done. I took care of them the best I could. They didn't necessarily like it, but what's a leader do? A leader's about getting the job done, and sometimes you're going to be popular, sometimes you're not.
Sure. I definitely get that. So here's another interesting question. So you're on a ship, right? And let's just use the Enterprise for example.
Sure.
And by the way, so off in the weeds again, The USS Enterprise, is that the same ship that they used for Star Trek?
It is the same one. Yeah. So Gene Roddenberry was fascinated by the story of the USS Enterprise in World War II, which was
Wow.
CV6.
Yeah.
It was an incredible battle history, most decorated carrier, I think, in World War II.
Okay.
So when that World War II carrier was decommissioned, they built a nuclear-powered one,
Okay.
CVN-65, which I served
That's
on.
okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, the name Enterprise and,
Yeah,
and the one that served in World War II is actually the one that they based the TV show off of.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Understand. So you're on a ship, an aircraft carrier, the Enterprise. What's probably the number one issue that you in command in intelligence? What's the one thing that came about most often and that probably had the biggest impact on your people?
You know, I tell you, that was a really sharp crew. I'm not just saying that. And I will say these sailors who were on board Enterprise, we got them, a lot of them right out of boot camp and their basic intelligence training. They were ready to learn. They were eager to learn.
Okay.
So because of that, they did exceptionally well.
Okay.
I told them, I set the tone, talk about leaders setting the tone. When we went
Sure.
through training, I said, I want you all to be ready to take criticism. I want, we call it open kimono. Let's find out we're wrong, because where we fail here, we won't fail in combat, and people won't get killed.
So could that be another defining tactic of a leader would be, I guess you can say, constructive criticism?
Yeah, constructive criticism. How are you going to be a leader who's growing and becoming an organization of continuous improvement? Right. I mean, that's one thing we have to come to, continuing to be better. So I worked for an Admiral John Wade. He was, when I was on the Lincoln, Information Warfare Commander, exceptional leader.
Okay.
And he said during our initial training, hey, it's okay to fail. That's what happens here. But I think as you get senior, you don't want to fail. You want to be able to show that you're
Sure.
competent on that. But
Right.
you need to go in there with a teachable spirit.
Okay.
So you have to be able to take criticism. You have to set that tone so your sailors take criticism, and then you look at how you can grow from learning.
Got you. Understood. So now you're in your final days or months of service in the Navy. Is there worry, stress? What's going on with you in the transitional period, or what's that like?
Well, I think once, I think it was March, we got back from a 10-month deployment on the Lincoln in January of 20. Okay, so March is when the list came out, and I realized that I was going to retire.
Okay. What list?
So that was the Admiral's list.
All right. What does that mean?
So that was the promotion list.
Oh.
So when that list came out and I wasn't on it, I knew I was
Got you.
I was done. And it was interesting. Some people were like, "Well, how do you feel?" I said, "I feel okay." I mean, I'd had an opportunity to serve. And the best thing was the Navy said, "We'd like you to stick around another year." So I was able to continue to do things that I wanted to finish with the Navy. But I think the anxiety was, what am I going to do next? I knew I could get a job, okay, but what kind of job?
That's right. And
I didn't want to work with for an organization I didn't share the values of.
Sure.
I didn't want to work with ornery people. I felt like I'd done enough of that.
Right.
And I said, I kind of wanted to be able to follow my own passion and desires.
Sure.
So Billy Graham has a retreat center called The Cove.
Okay.
So they do these 4-day spiritual retreats free for active duty military.
Okay.
And part of it is designed to help you see what God is telling you. So
wow.
I decided to take my wife down there, and we wanted to be a part of that.
Okay.
As we went down there, one of the things that became kind of clear was, what sticks to you? I said, well, I've been working with Honor Flight San Diego for over a decade. Mm-hmm. Love working with World War II veterans. Love telling their story, learning from their experiences, translating them into leadership training.
Right.
And to me, I said, well, that's kind of what I want to do. I didn't want to be a contractor. I didn't want to go into those things. Not that those are bad. I just didn't have any passion for me.
Right.
Working with veterans and military history, translating that and working with your team and other teams about leadership, that's what I have excitement about. That's what I want to do. Helping people be better organizations.
So like consulting.
The consulting, right. So that's kind of what I was thinking I was probably going to end up doing. But I know I need some time. I know I need to decompress.
Sure.
My wife was great about that. She said, "Hey, you've worked for 31 years. Just take some time off. Let's figure out."
Your wife was supportive of that.
Yeah.
She was ready to have you home and relax, chill. I got you.
Yeah, and I think I told my kids, where you start high school, you're going to finish high school. So I think that was kind of one thing we said. We know we're going to stay in Norfolk, and you're going to finish high school, and we'll see what happens with me.
I got you.
But I think financially, I had my retirement, so I wasn't too worried about that. I mean, I wasn't going to be taking cruises to the Caribbean or anything.
Right.
But we would be okay.
Sure.
While we sorted some of this out.
So you weren't having to worry about it financially. That's not to cut you off, but that's probably one of the largest struggles that people in the military now today who are transitioning out. And just speaking from experience, you're used to this amount of money, this amount of pay, and you're about to start over somewhere else doing something completely different, more than likely.
Right.
Does that mean that I'm going to have to go from, let's just say, $150,000 a year to $30,000 a year? And that puts a lot of stress on a family.
So, did you ever see the movie The Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, absolutely. Who hasn't?
So, was it Morgan Freeman who said, "I've been institutionalized"?
Yep.
So that's what it is for a military member.
Okay.
I think you walk out the door, you've had your health care taken care of.
Yep.
You've gotten money for housing.
Yep.
You've gotten pay. When you've gone overseas, you've gotten, hostile fire pay, tax-free pay.
Sure.
So you've been able to bring in some income.
Sure.
And
Okay.
you've been in that net. You know that if you go to the hospital and there's a problem, you can call your first sergeant or I can call my chief and they can help sort out the issues. You're part of that community.
That's right.
When you walk out the door,
All that goes away.
it all goes away. And then, you start dealing with what a lot of people deal with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
The frustration. And it's more a sense of a loss of community, I think, for people on the way out.
Right.
I think for me, I was fortunate. I'd done, done 3 decades worth. So I had that sense of community. I was still felt connected, but I can imagine for a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guard who does 5-6 years and gets out, it's quite a shock.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
And healthcare alone is the cost of healthcare. So now they're having to pay for things they didn't have to pay for before.
Right.
And it could be they're going to be part of organizations that don't value them as the military did.
That's right.
Or maybe even if they have checks and balances to protect them within the organization.
Sure.
They leave the military, they may not have that with a new company.
That's exactly right. So with Carrier Sailor, and do you consider it to be more or less leadership consulting?
I do. I've done some defense consulting. I mean, just straight defense consulting. Companies have called me up and asked me for, advice on electronic warfare, about defense contracts. So I've done some of that. I actually kind of consider that mentoring in some way.
Absolutely.
I'll be talking
For sure.
to people, trying to explain things that are technical and making them practical.
Okay.
Putting it in a way that they can understand and apply it and understand the operational environment. I always use that term with them. What is your operational environment? What are you working in what are you working around? What are the conditions and so forth? How does that define your ability to put a weapon system in there? What kind of weapon system do you need for that environment? And you can apply that to construction. We talked about that to Rally Point.
Right, yeah.
What's your operational environment? What's the work site look like? What are the people around it? Who are the people supporting you? How do you have to adjust your organization to meet that operational environment based on the mission?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So how long have you been out of the Navy now?
Retired in 2021, July of 2021.
Wow. So you're still green, really. I mean,
still green. Still doing different things. Been working with a lot of veterans groups, and sometimes it's providing free advice. Other times I'm doing some consulting. That's paid.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. I know Performance, we've actually utilized your services for our Rally Point. We do a thing called Leadership Rally Point twice a year. We've actually got one coming up soon in Alabama, and I think that it's really, really important as a leader to know that you don't know everything,
Absolutely.
right? And if you're willing and able to listen to someone else's ideas, their methods of mentoring and leading, that makes you that much greater of a leader. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's spot on. I will tell you that a good leader doesn't pretend to know answers, but he'll have people around him who can give him those answers.
Wow.
He empowers those below them. So he will set up a team and to put things together and solve problems for him, and he'll be the decision maker.
That's kind of funny. You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and talking about some of these leaders, General Ward and Admiral Gallagher, they said, hey, Shep, go do this. Just make it happen.
Right.
And I put it together, and it'd all flow in one piece. And he empowered me, so I didn't want to let him down, coming back to what we talked about. And he also stirred my creativity,
Right.
I think that's what a good leader does. If a leader's trying to do everything at once, he's going to fail.
Okay.
The other thing is you don't want to be a person who's it's a single point of failure. So when I was on Enterprise, make a long story short, we trained this team to go on deployment, and then we were out there. We did some doing some support operations, counter-piracy operations, supporting Afghanistan, operations in Iraq. I broke my leg,
Oh, my.
and so I was off the ship for 70 days. Okay, and one thing that happened is that the Navy said, well, Shep's gone, let's replace him. My admiral said, no, I want Shep back unless he can't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my model, or people like Wild Bill Garnier from Band of Brothers, he put black shoe polish on his leg cast to get back into battle. There was, to hide the fact that he was in a cast. Another guy in my Legion post that served with Patton, he fought with a broken leg. Said, I'm not leaving my guys. This is what a leader does.
Absolutely.
And so I decided I wanted to come back. Navy said, you don't have to go back. I broke my leg in 2 places. No, I want to go back. But when I got back, this is what the admiral said, you set the conditions for this to happen. Because when you broke your leg, you trained the team so well, and the team functioned well, they kept going even though you weren't there.
Wow.
That's the sign of a leader.
Wow.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
That's like leading from a distance. I mean, you can trust your personnel to take care of business while you're away.
Yeah, and if something happens to you, you've led the organization to such a high level of performance they're able to continue till someone else can come in.
Okay.
Now, I've seen leaders who everything's about them, and when something happens to them, the organization struggles.
Right.
When the person goes.
It's always a good thing to make sure you, so not necessarily you as a leader, but you, let's just say a junior leader. If you're wanting to be a leader, it's taking that initiative to learn the next level up. Right. And then so on and whatnot. Because once that individual's gone, once that leader's gone out, broken leg, whatever the case may be, when they're looking for somebody, well, this guy right here, he's been learning everything that next level up was doing, right? Let's give him an opportunity. That's the whole story of what's the quarterback for the New England Patriots? Help me out here, somebody. Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I think it was Drew Bledsoe. Am I right? Yeah, Drew Bledsoe got hurt or something happened like that. Tom Brady went like late in the round to get drafted. Nobody anticipated that Tom Brady was going to be a great quarterback.
Right.
Bledsoe comes out, Brady comes in, Brady shows out. I mean, just a spectacular athlete. Bledsoe, I don't even think he ever came back. He might have came back, but I don't think he played for the Patriots. Brady had taken over. Same concept, same principles. You learn that next level up, you're able to perform at that level. That's just the first step in many, many steps to come, right? Do you think that it's the same thing for our personnel?
I do. We were talking at one point earlier about Masters in the Air.
Yep.
And you look at that miniseries that's on right now, and if you notice, key leaders have been getting shot down in that, and yet people have come up to replace them.
Sure.
And I think your organization has to be one that's not based on the individual, but on the mission.
Yep.
And I think with personnel, if personnel are focused on the mission, trained to the mission, people are going to rise up. And if you're investing in mentoring your people, when that time comes, they'll be ready.
Absolutely.
And I think I mentioned to you in the break, I'm a member of the 100th Bomb Group Association.
Oh, wow.
And one of the characters mentioned, Masters of the Air, is Rosenthal. He's a Lieutenant Rosenthal. He's going to rise in rank and position in the series. But, you take someone who just shows up in the squadron as a first lieutenant, then becomes a squadron commander, as a major, lieutenant colonel, et cetera.
Right.
So that's what happens, within any organization, that people should be investing in company and moving up. You want people to stay within the organization. Mm-hmm. You want a good sign of your leadership is what your retention is.
That's right, yeah.
And if people are retaining in the organization and they're growing the organization, then they have a personal investment.
Right.
Anytime I felt that I was successful as leaders, I gave people ownership to do a role or position.
Wow.
And you have to give them acknowledgement. I remember bringing the Air Wing commander, a big fighter pilot, to talk to one of our E3s. The E3 showed him the work he was doing on battle damage. The Air Wing commander started calling him by his first name. That kid couldn't do enough. He felt valued, he felt respected, and he felt ownership.
Wow.
He said, hey, the Air Wing commander knows my name. But
Right.
it's little things like that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's what you'll see when their time is up for their duty shift's over, why they're still there.
Sure.
So I got to get this done. The CAG wants it. Okay.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people would be surprised, those little small things like that, how huge of an impact they have on younger individuals, younger leaders, even some of the senior leaders. If you're not intertwined somehow with the vice president or the president of your company, whatever that may be, when you get to meet that individual and that individual knows your name, that is humongous. Yeah. I mean, it happened to me. I went to one of the rally points last year, and the president of the company walked up to me, shook my hand, and called me by my first name. That was probably one of the high points of my career within performance. I thought the world of that. Yeah. So and you as a leader, you maybe take that to heart. If you've got people out in the field, if you've got people doing things, even your family, whatever the case may be, take the time to go out and shake some hands. Wrap your arm around them and tell them how you really feel. Let them know that you care. That's what a lot of people need.
I think what I tried to do. This is my Army training. All right,
okay, yeah. Oh, Dad.
Yeah. So when I was on Christmas and we were in port, I'd go down to the carrier and find my sailors on watch, wish them a Merry Christmas.
Wow.
I took my oldest with me. He was about 4 years old. He made some bags of candy. We went down to the ship. But just knocking on the door, hey, Merry Christmas, how you doing? You know. I think little things like that. A leader needs to be visiting them in the heart. If it's raining out there at the work site, go out and see them.
Sure.
Don't go there when everyone's there, and they're go there at the odd times when they're working hard and they may just need a little lifting up.
Right.
That's where the impact is.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I know myself as the military workforce development coordinator within performance, that's mainly one of my biggest goals is to get out and see our job sites, see our junior personnel, our junior leaders and our leaders, and who a lot of them are veterans. We, like I said earlier, we've got 477 veterans within our company right now, and I get out there, I'll shake their hands. We do different things together, to let them know that they're appreciated. And then I get some kind of feedback, or our department gets some kind of feedback based off of that. Their performance has went up, their attendance has went up. I mean, these things are impacting this company, right? And they're telling people, hey, look, performance supports our military. Why don't you come over here and work for us? They'll take care of you. Like you said, you take care of your people will take care of you.
You got a mission. Yeah.
I think it's outstanding. And your whole story, Shep, I think it can really be taken to heart, from the time you grew up in Norfolk, decided you wanted to join the Navy, and then, actually joining the Navy, becoming a commander. I don't think I have actually had a discussion with anyone that served as long as you. So this has all been new to me. So this whole conversation's been really, really informational. I wanted to thank you for that. So if you had a message that you wanted to put out to veterans, right now would be the perfect opportunity. What would you say to all the veterans out there who are listening or watching?
I say that you have a lot of talent, more than you realize. You've been put through situations that most Americans can never understand or appreciate. And when you come to any organization, you have a lot to offer it. Your ability to manage stress, your ability to organize, your ability to be part of a team. And I want to stress the part of a team. Organizations can be dysfunctional, and that's where leaders can step in and they can help bring order out of chaos.
Right.
And so I would encourage all of you to step up, know your worth, and know that when you come to a company, you're bringing them something of value. You're not just taking, you're bringing them your leadership experiences and your ability to work in a highly effective team.
Wow. That's powerful. That is super powerful. I couldn't have put it any better. You know, there's a lot of people, and this is my message as well. So there's a lot of people out there and veterans struggling. You know, they don't know what to do. They may be in the transitional period. They may be about to transition, or they might be out of the military already looking for that next step. You know, we all deal with things in different ways. Some people might, you know, go to their parents. Some people might go to their siblings. Some people might go to God or whichever, right? Whatever it is that you're struggling with, there's help, right? I mean, we all struggle at times.
Right.
There's
right.
always somebody out there who can help. My message is let somebody know. If you're struggling, if you need some help, let somebody know. Don't battle this life alone, right? It wasn't made to walk alone, right? We're not made to do it alone. So that's my message. I want to thank you, Shep, for everything that you've come forward. I want to thank you for your brick that you brought from Hanoi Hilton, the message that came along with it. I think your message about your career was outstanding, your fundamentals, your key elements of leadership. I think the entire podcast was just outstanding. And I hope you as a viewer or listener have really taken some of this information and applied it in your own personal life. And I want to thank the team here, for everybody that's here today. I want to thank you all again. John, the guy behind the camera.
Good job, John.
And always remember, there's always somebody out there who's struggling. Sometimes they just might need words of encouragement, pat on the back. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's you who can make the difference. I want to say thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. This is Mike Favre signing off.